Welcome, everyone, to this premium tactical explainer. Today, we're stepping onto the gridiron for a deeply analytical look at the 2026 preseason Week 2 matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Arizona Cardinals out at State Farm Stadium. You know, we aren't just watching a normal game today, we are examining a real-time tactical laboratory. So, let's cut right through the August noise and dive into the verified schemes, the intense roster battles, and the hard evidence you're going to see under the lights this Saturday. All right, let's get into it.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the central tactical question, move on to 3 key tactical duels, uncover the hidden yardage in special teams, map out live cues and game states, and then finish up with our data-driven projections.
Starting right off with Section 1, the central tactical question. To really grasp what's happening in this matchup, we have to look at the vastly different approaches from Brian Schottenheimer in Dallas and Mike LaFleur over in Arizona. Both coaching staffs are treating this game very differently based on cumulative August snaps, and honestly, it creates a fascinating core operational asymmetry. Arizona's confirmed plan, they're rolling with Gardner Minshew II for a long stint. We're talking at least the first half, maybe even bleeding into the third quarter. They're deliberately sitting Jacoby Brissett, rookie Carson Beck is sidelined with some sore ribs, and their starting offensive line and top receivers are getting the night off. Now Dallas, they are doing the exact opposite. Dak Prescott and most of the Dallas starters are sitting right from kickoff. That means the Cowboys are immediately handing over the keys to a rotational combo of Joe Milton III and Sam Howell. And that setup brings us to the ultimate central tactical question for this game. How does Arizona's early quarterback stability actually hold up against Dallas's late-game rotational variance? The narrative tension here is just perfectly defined. In the first half, you have relatively predictable roles and stability from Minshew. But as we get into the second half, that gives way to deliberate uncertainty. Arizona pivots to Keaton Slovis, while Dallas just keeps leaning into their reserve continuity. Moving on to Section 2, 3 key tactical duels. Let's shift our focus down to the granular, specific unit battles happening on the field, because let's face it, this is where games are actually won or lost in August. Our first major duel is Gardner Minshew going up against Dallas's disguised pressure. Look, Minshew's extended runway is absolutely Arizona's biggest advantage early on, but there's a pretty massive catch. He's operating without the Cardinals' first-choice offensive line. So this battle entirely depends on whether Minshew can process the Cowboys' second-unit defensive looks quickly enough to keep the offense on schedule, all before a reserve pocket inevitably collapses. Exactly how Arizona executes without premier targets like Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, and Trey McBride is really going to dictate the pace. The Cardinals absolutely have to prioritize on-time intermediate completions. We should expect quick decisions, protected boot action concepts, and checkdowns that preserve field position rather than reckless isolation throws. Meanwhile, Dallas is probably going to show 2 high safety looks pre-snap, rotate late, and only send a 5th rusher when they absolutely feel they have to. So what's the ultimate marker you should be watching here? Well, if Minshew starts taking negative plays or holding the ball too long against a light 4-man rush, Arizona's scoring expectations are going to absolutely plummet. Duel number 2 totally flips the script. It's the Dallas Reserve offensive line against Arizona's run fits. The Cowboys have been very public about identifying their run blocking as a major, needed correction point for this week. I mean, they have to protect their backup quarterbacks from obvious, predictable passing downs, and that all starts with moving an Arizona defensive front that is incredibly hungry, literally competing for their regular season roster spots. The focus on the trenches here is for a glaringly obvious reason. Think about this. Last week against Seattle, the Cowboys generated a grand total of just 40 net rushing yards in the entire first half. Just 40. The coaching staff publicly called out poor edge leverage and a total lack of perimeter run access. Without any early down efficiency, Milton and Howell were constantly forced to play hero ball, just desperately trying to rescue the offense from behind the chains. So if you want to see if Dallas has actually fixed these inside zone issues, here are 3 live cues to watch. Right at the snap on first down, monitor the line of scrimmage displacement. Are they getting a push? Then, keep your eyes on Arizona's rotational linebackers. Are they easily scraping down the backside pursuit? And finally, are Dallas running backs actually reaching the second level before taking a hit? Grabbing 4 to 6 yards on early downs will radically simplify life for those reserve quarterbacks. All right, let's step away from the trenches and move to our third tactical duel on the perimeter, evaluation receiving depth. Out wide, reserve receivers are fighting for their professional lives against depth secondaries. And in a tight, low-scoring preseason contest, it's often a single explosive play from one of these depth pieces that can completely tilt the outcome of the entire game. There are two vital names you need to know in this matchup. For Dallas, it's Camden Brown. He flashed some seriously brilliant production on limited film last week. 3 catches, 62 yards, and 2 incredible touchdowns, including a beautiful 39-yard connection with Sam Howell. For Arizona, keep your eyes locked on Jalen Brooks. He offers a heavy volume profile, already leading their receivers with 9 catches for 151 yards over their first 2 exhibition games. Watch closely how both of these guys adjust to zone windows to defeat press leverage today.
Up next, Section 3, Special Teams and Field Position. Let's pivot away from the standard offensive and defensive schemes to talk about the hidden yardage battle. Based on the concrete evidence we have leading into this game, this phase represents the single most significant non-offensive edge for the Arizona Cardinals. 144. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the massive amount of return yards the Dallas Cowboys surrendered across 6 punt and kick returns last week in Seattle.
Look at the cascading effect of giving up those 144 yards. Because of it, Seattle's average starting field position was its own 42-yard line. Coach Schottenheimer publicly called this coverage performance out, citing lost contain, poor kickside leverage, and just major communication failures. For Arizona, this is a very concrete pathway to score points without needing to sustain long, efficient offensive drives. The crazy part? The Cardinals don't even need a spectacular return touchdown to exploit this. They simply need disciplined lane integrity and clean, mistake-free exchanges to secure a short field. This makes ball security and lane integrity the absolute clearest swing factor of the night.
Moving to Section 4, Live Cues and Game States.
As we all know, preseason football is entirely dictated by the clock and the scoreboard. So consider this your personal scout's checklist for the first quarter. Honestly, ignore the early score. You want to prioritize deployment evidence. Step 1, visually confirm Gardner Minshew is under center and verify exactly which reserve linemen are out there protecting him. Step 2, note whether Joe Milton III or Sam Howell takes that crucial first series for Dallas. Step 3, closely chart if Dallas is getting positive displacement on their first down runs. And finally, Step 4, every single time Dallas kicks the ball, record their lane integrity. These 4 cues are going to tell you the real story of the game way before the scoreboard ever does.
You also want to watch how the tactical geometry shifts across 3 distinct game states. If Arizona jumps out to an early lead under Minshew, you can expect a clock-draining, low-risk offense that forces Dallas into a desperate perimeter game, with runs and screens. Now, if Dallas leads early, Arizona has to use quick game movement throws to catch up, while Dallas will naturally tighten their run block sequencing. But the real key here is the fourth quarter. If we hit a 1-score game late, all regular season urgency completely vanishes. It becomes Keaton Slovis versus the Dallas quarterback rotation, where coaches will gladly settle for a long field goal or a punt rather than put a risky turnover on tape.
And finally, Section 5, Final Projections and the Verdict.
It's time to take all this tactical evidence, the verified rotational plans, and the live cues to deliver our model-driven conclusions. Here's the raw outcome probability breakdown. The model estimates a 52% win probability for Arizona, a 46% win probability for Dallas, and a very deliberate 2% probability of a tie. Now, you might be wondering, why does that 2% tie matter? Well, because under current preseason formatting, games actually end tied after regulation. The probability of an overtime period is exactly 0. So we have to factor that regulation tie directly into the math, rather than just treating it as standard overtime noise.
Translating those probabilities to the scoreboard, our model projects a final score of Arizona 20, Dallas 19. Notice that combined baseline of just 39 points. That ceiling is heavily restrained, and for very good reason. It actively accounts for Arizona missing its premium offensive pass catchers, Dallas's documented early run blocking issues that will limit sustained drives, and of course, the extreme volatility we fully expect from late-game fourth-quarter quarterback play from both rosters.
This quote really hits the nail on the head and summarizes our final fixture-specific verdict. Arizona is a narrow preseason favorite quite simply because the Cardinals have announced the more stable early-game quarterback plan. Minshew's confirmed half-plus of action creates predictable early stability. However, that 46% win probability for the Cowboys, that acknowledges Dallas's really strong counterweight. Milton and Howell have proven they can maintain reserve continuity, and Camden Brown gives them genuine, dangerous receiving depth on the perimeter.
Now, we always like to keep things completely transparent here, so a quick disclaimer is necessary. These projections are strictly constrained preseason model estimates based solely on the publicly announced roles we've just discussed. This is absolutely not betting advice. And more importantly, we are not manufacturing or extrapolating unavailable 2026 regular season EPA, success rate metrics, or true talent stats from a tiny sample of exhibition noise. The regular season hasn't started yet, folks, and we certainly aren't going to pretend that it has.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. You now know exactly what to look for when the ball is kicked off. But the beautiful tension of this matchup remains. In a fixture completely defined by deliberate uncertainty, will Saturday be decided by a clean, stable first-half operation under Gardner Minshew, or will it all come down to a chaotic, unpredictable late-game reserve breakdown in the fourth quarter? Keep your eyes on those first-quarter cues, watch the line of scrimmage closely, and above all, enjoy the game.